Solitary confinement within my mind led me to the water to find myself as I write, pushing towards the light, creating art that is poetry. This became my therapy. This is JDR Creatives, and this is Lonely Walks by the Water. Another location. We back. The last time we were together, we were talking, I came in hard, So I know I came in hard, talked about some serious subjects, talked about, divorce. We talked about, we have elements of, suicide, depression, what it was like to be a father, post-divorce. And really, I want to make sure before we start, I'm gonna read your poem. Just want to check on you and say, how are you doing? How are you doing? I know I'm all right, but I know the topics can be a little strong, and that's the point. The point is we want you to sit with your feelings. We want you to do a little introspection, just as I would do near the water. And that's the point of these lonely walks. We're doing it by the water to really get that out. And a lot of times it became a poem so that I can take that energy out of myself and put it somewhere and then move on. That's been a very cathartic process for me that, helped me be able to come back and actually give this to you. Because like I said, this was a book. They locked it up in a safe. You're not going to get all the poems, but I'm going to give you some of the thought. And in this location, I'll start you off with one that was big to me. Returning to that familiar place for healing, my only expectation of this day, listening to the waves crash against the sand. With the sun beaming, signaling a new day, feeling lost, I'm turned around. I need direction. This place brings back my smile. I don't have the answers that I will be all right, but I have taken the time to reset. Alone, I will sit until I have the courage to answer my question, finding my purpose. So, with that, some of the elements I thought about as we were going to make this episode was, well, where was I at when I came here? And really, in the last place we were, it was really dealing post-divorce, dealing with these thoughts. And I struggled with thoughts of feeling alone, feeling invisible for some time. But the one thing that kind of held me up was purpose. What was my purpose? What was I doing? And was I doing the right thing by my son? Was I being the father that he needed me to be? And they were, providing for him, covering him emotionally, mentally, spiritually, financially. Yeah, that you're supposed to do that. But really, was now we're divorced. How does that look for him? What are the feelings he's going to have? Because I know what it felt like when my parents got divorced. And then moving from Las Vegas, Nevada, all the way to Panama City, it was, my dad was in the service, so I was only seeing him in the summer. My father reminded me that as hard as I was being on myself, I had a little bit easier than him because, I see my son every other week. And every 7 days, we rotate, whereas my dad didn't see us until the summer. So it was perspective that helped me to align my purpose. That's where it started with me giving my poetry to the world. That's where it started with me making a podcast and talking about these poems and the feelings that I had. I wanted to leave something for my son so that when he became a man, when he became an adult, if he ever needed a voice or he needed something to go back to and reference, he had that. And then it became this endeavor of giving back. God gave me this talent, and who was I to hold it up or hold it back? It was my responsibility to make sure that I served. And, God blessed me with this, so I wanted to give it back. I wanted to talk about the difficult conversation. And really, one of them is being in plain sight and feeling invisible. Getting up every day and going to work and going places and feeling like no one sees you. Only time they see you is when they want something from you. They need money, when they need your time. And what I learned in that was boundaries. I was not raised on boundaries. I was used to everyone pulling from my cup. Constantly was pouring, 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 even when I had nothing to pour. But when I turned around and I needed them to pour back into me, that was too much of a problem. It always was. And so here we would be, a place like this, taking a walk by the water, spending time reflecting and really trying to process it because we were beyond that point of me being able to try to take my life. My son needed me to be his father, but at the same time, I had to remember I had to find purpose, find my purpose in this. Why was I here? What was I doing? And the poetry helped me. It helped me to define who I was. And then with that, I was able to kind of see I wasn't, people were telling me kind words and they were telling me I mattered to them, but I didn't hear them. I wasn't trying to hear them because they didn't have to go home to a lonely house at night when my son wasn't with me. Those words sound great, but they don't work when I close that door and lock it at night and no one's in the house and it's quiet. But the poetry got me to get in front of people, got me to share my art, to be able to talk to people around the world, which reminded me that part of the purpose. I can be Ryan's father, but I also am Jemiah. I had lost a lot of myself in my marriage and my divorce. I lost who I was. And I had to claw myself out of that to find myself again. The water helped me do it.
How did you, in the midst of your storm, get the idea to start writing poetry?
I've been writing since I was 14, off and on at times. I would go to it when I was angry. I tend to write more in emotion. So I always was kind of doing it, but going back was I needed a form of therapy. And like I told Mel, this is the part that I'll leave here. People talk about going to somebody's couch or talking to a therapist. This has always been my therapist. This and the poetry. You never went to talk to a person. This is odd. This plus the poetry helped me get through it. And then of course my talks with God. I mean that helped me walk through it. But I never sat on someone's couch. I know that's very important for some people, but to trust people who don't look like me or to trust people who do look like me who don't have the intent that I have, that was tough. So I just, like I said, I'm invisible. If I come out here and I sit near the water, they may look at me and be like, man, what's that crazy dude doing? They're not going to bother me. It just allowed me to collect my thoughts, really sit with my thoughts. Because when we're running back and forth, a lot of times we have a lot of things here, but they're jumbled. And when I come here and hear that water crash and smell the sights, everything, I'm able to just breathe. I can focus in on my breath. I can hear my heartbeat, and then I can just hear my thoughts clearly. And then I was able to just put them into to poems.
So when it comes to your poetry, are there any restrictions, any subjects that would you would consider off limits? I ask that because
That's a
some
good
people
question.
have real dark secrets
Yeah.
and it'll eat at you and it can take you into a dark place.
No, I don't think I have. Where the restrictions I've always done, like I've talked to Mel about, is I would write something and I'd hold on to it for 2 years. And I had to get myself to a point to be like, we got to empty the well. We got to let it go. Like, this to me may feel like it's too much, but it has to go out. So I've never had restrictions on subjects. There now currently, like he knows, there's only about 2 years of the catalog sitting up. 7 years back, that's a lot darker than what we are now. And I only put it back because it was, when people are going to the page, I don't want them to be flooded with too much. So I was like, okay, 2 years is around 250, maybe 260 pounds. I was trying to shorten it up so that they actually take in what I'm doing. But there are times where I'll turn it all back on and let them see a walk over 8 years and see, okay, wow, I can see what he's talking about. He was really sad here. Um, I think when it comes to the darkness, I've always said it's easy for me to write. It's the light that's hard for me to write. And that's what I've had to work myself towards. Love. To be able to talk about love in a sense where I belong in it. If you look at my writing, that's a very hard piece for me to do. Because when people read love, it's love as a third person. Or I'm chasing after love and I can't get to it. Darkness is what I know. That's easy. So I can write that in many different ways. I can touch on it lightly, or I can go right down to the source where you go, oh, well, something, somebody need to call this brother. Is something wrong? So no, I have no restriction.
So you mentioned you have a son.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that you could teach him poetry as a way of controlling his emotions? And I say that because in this day and age of bullying that's
Mm-hmm.
out there and stuff, kids are dealing with different things.
Correct.
And instead of acting out and being labeled as an angry black child,
Correct.
do you think that poetry can help him in that?
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. It's crazy because when you go through a journey of like what I went through, you take the time to sit and you start learning things. Like I realized my father wrote poetry. We're having conversations with him because I remember when I kind of had this breakdown, he was very concerned because he never saw me in a light. He always saw me as just strong. He never saw me like you're very capable. So that's when he was like, he started asking more about what I was doing, and I learned about him. For my son, he's different from us in that way. Like we have times where we'll talk about the poetry and talk about mindsets or what do you see here? Because I like to see a person look at my piece and give me a different perspective, how they feel it. That's the beautiful part. Because then I know that art has energy. The energy I put into it could be different from how you see it. And that's what's beautiful to me. And there's times when me and my son have went through that and I'm like, wow, that's it's really cool to hear from your perspective. But for him, it's he's an artist. He draws. So it's like his energy and creation is in that. He's like, oh, dad, poetry's your thing. But that's a really great question because yes, there are times where I'm like, you you see why I said you need to focus and why when people one of the bigger ones is about when people lash out at you. A lot of times that comes from a place of either their own anger or their own fear. Neither one of them have anything to do with you. You know this. You mastered in this. But as you said, as a child, trying to raise him in a world where 8 hours a day he's out of my care and he has to be his own person. That was one of the ones to see him from grade school. I remember the first time he was called the N word in first grade. But we already had that conversation as he went to pre kindergarten. So at 4 years old, we're having this conversation because I'm like, it's going to happen. There's going to be somebody who's going to do it to you, but you cannot react in that because something's wrong with them. For him to only come to me at a 6 year old and say, that kid sees you come to school, pick me up every day. He's sad because his dad lives far away. See, ain't got nothing to do with you directly. It's got everything to do with his lack, his anger, his sadness. And so, yeah, no, I've definitely, and that's part of why I put it out. I put it out to the world because it's for him. It all started for me. He was kind of the North Star. But what I had to realize is he can't be my North Star because he's 12. He'll be 13 soon. I only have 5 more summers before he's his own man. And I can't use him as my anchor to stay in a place. So, no.
So when it comes to your poetry, how tough was it for you to master being vulnerable in your writings?
You come with the good stuff today. You got to get you on the show. Woo. Um, so as far as the writing part of it, and told to vulnerability, that was never hard. The hard part was finally stepping into the light. It's easy to write something and go, oh, okay. It's hard to be like, this one's too dark. I feel like there's an image that they have of me. And if I put this one out, they're not gonna see me that way. Am I ready for that? I don't know. And that was really the first 2 years. First 2 years, when we go back, it was anytime I talked in darkness, it was very light, very on the surface. I didn't take you to the abyss. After, I had a teammate that I worked with, he died at work. And we went through the craziness at work where they didn't want us to go to his celebration of life. And like, I'm going. I'm sick. I'm not going to be there. It was a pivotal moment because he was a very encouraging person for me. He would always say kind words. And I remember there were times where um, he was so full of life. And I remember thinking to myself, like, man, there were times I didn't want to live, and this person died, and I'm still here. So it was a critical moment to say, if they don't accept me for who I am, oh well. But I have a responsibility to my son, and I think if there's a person, I think I can touch a person, and if it's just one outside of my son, that's all I need. And then I was just okay, boom. I'm start putting them out, and then because of how I set my account up, it was not connected to anybody who knew me. So I was literally just going out there into the world trying to talk to artists and trying to like, here is what I'm putting out. What do you think? Give me your hardest feedback. It's not going to change the way I write, but it's only going to help me master the skill because I want to be better. Because my problem when I first started writing, I wrote from an emotional standpoint. So my pen, like when people talk about writer's block, I got writer's block. I would have emotional block. If my emotions were too out of whack, I could not pick up my pen. I have to sit and process them to be able to let the energy flow. Well, then I would start doing a thing where I would train myself where I would write 4 to 8 stanza. And that's how I got out of that. So I don't need to write from an emotional standpoint. I can look at when I leave today from the pictures I took, I can write poems on that because I felt that moment. I feel it and I know, and I can write in many different ways.
You said something about acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
people accepting. As you look at how far you've come now,
Mm-hmm.
how important is it for you to consider how people accept you or the way they look at you?
Oh, and we gotta get you an Emmy. Uh, I'm telling you, that's a great question. I wrote a poem about a lesser. I think the words are the lesser version used to care. My higher version doesn't give a damn. I don't care. I don't give a damn what they think. We all have a story. We're all one of one. And we should all be sharing our story. I think the nonsense that we're watching and all the stuff we're taking in, it's getting away from the real connections. The real, you did this, this, and this. You went to this place. How was that? That's what we got to get back to. And the darkness that I've experienced, there are plenty of people that I've met, that I've talked to in France, Europe, England, over just having a podcast and putting my energy out there and just being unscripted and talking about how I felt and knowing they went through things. So I know I'm not doing the wrong thing. But as far as acceptance, it doesn't pay my bills. Like I told Mel, when I was young, the word they used of the day was weird. And it was a word I hate. They labeled me weird, different, weird. Yeah. And what I learned is it wasn't me. I used to get so angry, like, man, why are they doing that? Why can't they accept me? No. It was fear. They saw how great I was, or they knew I could be great. But they couldn't let me do that, so they had to kind of put some obstacles in front of me, and I was without knowledge. I was young. I didn't realize that they couldn't see the greatness within themselves looking at me. I was a mirror, and that light was too much, so they labeled me to keep me from where I was supposed to go.
Yeah, most of us are searching for that one thing
Correct.
that they think that they were put on this planet to do.
Correct.
And they say when you find it, it'll be something that's not difficult for you.
Correct.
Do you see poetry in that light?
I do, and that's why I said like I told Mel, I have a responsibility to empty the well. Don't want on my last day. I don't want anybody to. I don't want it to be like these artists who have a bunch of different poems or songs. No, it's all out. It's all for the world because they can go back and resonate with this piece or that piece. It's my responsibility to use this gift all the way. I got to squeeze the juice out of this grape. If I leave any on the table, I have not served my purpose at all. Doesn't matter how many souls I touch. If I do not empty the well, I have not served my purpose.
So, moving forward,
Mm-hmm.
do you see your poetry expanding
In what way?
in a way that you can talk about the darkness, you can talk about the light, and you can talk about how difficult it is to put your self on paper?
I don't know. In a way, maybe in poems I could, because the thing is, I don't want to. You try to capture someone quickly within a poem, and a lot of times I'll find myself I can write 50 stanza easily, and then be like, okay, how do we break this down so we don't lose them? So I believe yes, I can do that. I've tried to use my podcast to really express. Like I'll do an episode. It started off a few years ago. Oddly enough, I called it the Lost episode. I was just up one night and I was like, I just want to read all my poems for the year, and I read them and I was like, I might not put this episode out, and then I found the courage to put it out. And so every year I read my poems. Now over the last 2 years, I have so many I have to break it into two episodes because I don't want somebody sitting there for 2 hours listening to me. Because when I go through the poems, I give you where I was. I give you the feeling that I have because I love when people tell me, "Well, I feel this." Great. That I want to know how you feel about this because you didn't go through this to write it. You're receiving it, so that may click you back to a moment that you were in, but it's gonna be different from mine. But that's why this art means so much to me. And then like with mail kind of packaging certain poems up and getting me to speak on them and coming from his perspective, it brings new life into them in a different way. That's the beautiful part. That okay, I wrote it like this, but now other people see it like this. So no, I want to continue to expand and expound and just there are no limitations for I want to go with it. I have to continue to grow, and that's why being around other people who are artists or creators, and it doesn't have to be poetry. It can be. It's like the gentleman that have the show that he was working on, overseas. Like Zen and Miles, like that creates spark within me to continue to create. When I look at my son and I know kids like in this generation need something that creates spark. So yeah.
So when you are by the water and you sitting alone,
Mhm.
do you come with a topic to write about, or you just let the feeling hit you?
The feeling hit me. Usually when I come to the water, the first thing it'll start with me. It'll probably start with me laughing because I'm talking to the universe. I'm talking to ancestors. I'm talking to people and just being like, yeah, it ain't been a good week. They've been beat my ass all week, and then I'll just start, getting to a point where the topic that I want to talk, like what I'm feeling at that moment, I start talking about it just here. That's probably why people think I'm crazy. I'll be sitting there talking to myself, but it's really just kind of me getting it out, and then I'll feel it. And usually when if it's a sunrise or sunset, when I leave, I'll say thanks for listening. I don't usually write poems on those walks. That's the crazy part about it. Um, to me, it's the healing. Like it started out where I needed to sit and then I would type some thoughts out. But as time has progressed, I don't write poems here anymore. I come, I speak to the universe, I say what I'm going after. It's something like I told Mel: speak your secrets to the wind, never tell another human. I have found that when I come to the water, when I speak to nature, it has always protected me. When I've spoken to people who said they cared for me, they have always hurt me. So it has caused me to retract within, but over the last 5 years, the universe has taught me I'm not supposed to close the gates completely. There are people around who do care for me. They may not know me completely, but they want to see me win. And I have to have better discernment on who I let close. That's what the work with boundaries helped me with. To know how to say if a person keeps stepping across that line, hey, I love you, but I'm gonna have to love you from a distance. I have to reserve generosity because if not, I'm going to taint my well and I have to take care of myself first. I cannot serve anyone else if I'm not right. And so that's the cool part about the process now. It's like I'm out here with nature, I'm feeling it. And then usually when I get back home and I look at the pictures, that's when it floods and the pen starts going. I try to be, this is kind of my healing space now, so I try to be respectful. In the early days, I needed to get the thoughts out because if they were still here, I would go home and I wouldn't sleep well. But now it's not, nah, I'm good. I'm blessed. I have great friends. My son is amazing and I'm very blessed. And I'm being able to put out my art like I want.
from an emotional standpoint,
Hmm.
what emotion do you think sparks your best poetry?
I'm gonna give you the Emmy. I'm gonna go make an Emmy. Uh, um, wow. When it started, I would say probably sadness, anger. As we are here now, oh man, that's great. I don't know if it's maybe a color wheel of emotions. I think I've taken the time to learn about the emotional wheel. I've, read more EQ books because I want to harness all sides of it. So really, it's kind of like today when I write this, how did I feel in this moment being with y'all? You know, and those words really, it's joy, it's peace, tranquility. So I can go into those places and then create from there. Whereas I am not what I used to be. Where anger, I could give you 50 stanza on some anger. I can give you 60 stanza on indifference. Because indifference, I used to I used to get angry and just be indifferent. Oh, it doesn't matter. But now it's more of a balanced emotional will. And I think that's probably why I don't write at the site. I take my time to honor myself and then honor nature, speak my secrets into the wind, and then walk away, and then go and look back at the pictures I took, and then channel that emotion properly.
So, if someone is listening to you
Mm-hmm.
and they're going through some things,
Mm-hmm.
what would you tell them to focus on when they're writing?
Where do we get him from? Where do we get this guy from? um, One, I tell everybody you have to have as a creator, you have to have a process, and don't be limited on how that process stays. If you stay limited in it, you'll find yourself tipping into regression. So one of the things I'll give you is an instance. The teammate I told you about, Lucas, he died 10 days before my birthday. We celebrated his life on my birthday. I found that very unique in how the universe did it. My father called me that day because he knew I was going to go to Alabama to celebrate. Like he was like, he knows death and just losing things. He was like, you might should stay home, but I know you're going to be there for your teammates. Yeah. So I go. He calls me right after we did the ceremony and he's like, happy birthday. I'm like, thanks. He was like, you around your teammates? Yeah. He was like, so did you ever wonder why I keep telling you to celebrate your birthday? Because I didn't, until 34, I didn't really celebrate them. You know, I did, why celebrate them? Who cares? And I was like, nah. I said, I don't know. He was like, are you understanding the message that you're being given? And I said, I think I do. Like, you believe you're going to wake up tomorrow, but you're not guaranteed it. And what you think, you can say, oh, yeah, I'll talk to you tomorrow. That person, you may not get to talk to him. So you got to honor the moment right now. And so what I would do is from 34 up until last year, I would come specifically here in the sunrise and I would meet the sunrise. And then I would be on this side for the sunset. I would get up in the morning and I would speak out all for the last year up until June 16th, everything I accomplished, everything I didn't accomplish, and the things that I was working on, and ask for forgiveness from my ancestors, even him, if I didn't honor him in the way I was supposed to. And I would come to the set and I would make goals for the new year and what I was going to do. It was last year that I stopped that when I got up in the morning. I came and I just sat on that side. I didn't say anything. I laughed for a bit. I told him I missed him. I got in my car and I left. And my son wasn't going to be with me until the next day because we were going to Pensacola for a baseball game. I called my ex-wife and I said, I need to see my son today. In that moment, I went from being in my own world to being in the world of the living. It was a critical moment for me. And all those things that I used to do, as far as you got to put your poems out at this time, you got to do this, I stopped doing it. So, as an artist, to go back to your original question, you have to find a process that works for you. You have to be willing to evolve within that process. As far as anything else, it's going to be up to you. But you shouldn't be afraid of trying different things. And that's where, if you do know artists who are like minded, have the right intent, you can pick up some of the things they're doing. to add into your process, but don't limit yourself. No, there should be no restrictions on creation. There should be no limitations. I used to live with them. My first few years doing this, I would limit everything. You can't put it out to this time. You got to put it out in the morning if it's a sad poem. It can't come out at night. So many restrictions. But because I felt that when I put my energy out there, I had a responsibility to do it properly. If someone was going to see it, I didn't want to catch them at the right or wrong moment. No more restrictions on that. Put it out, because there could be somebody right now in this moment that needed to see that it could change the arc of their day. They could be like, you know what, I'm yelling at everybody today. And then they say, you know what, now they smiling. And I may never know that, but I did the work I was supposed to do. I was afraid, and everything I wanted seemed to float away, leaving me to search my feelings while I built my resolve. The best part of this story is that it marches on. If you watch closely, you will get to see it unfold. I will reach that finish line. There is nothing that I will allow to stop me from standing in that light. For now, I will sit alone, tinkering inside of my home. Stay tuned, a story will be told. You have always understood how to move through the world undetected. To most who walk along your path, invisible, leaving only smiles as you depart. This scene that you stand before, a path leading into the distance, alone. It's not the worst thing. It's all in how you carry it. There are moments like this in which you wish you were holding her hand, hearing her laugh, watching her facial expressions.
I don't need no